Hello everyone, I am as always Raphael, and today we want to talk about a topic that might be very important for everyone who's moving to Switzerland, especially if it's the first time of moving into Switzerland. And that topic is, why is it so difficult to find a place to live in Switzerland as a new expat? I actually want to start with a good message here, and that is that it's not actually difficult to find a place to live in all of Switzerland. Specifically in the south of Switzerland, in the cantons of Ticino and Vallis, it can be remarkably easy to find a place to live, and that is because these places have historically been left behind a bit in the economic development. So there is actually a surplus of flats that are available to be rented out, and sometimes these flats are empty for a few months even. So it makes it really easy to find a place to live in these southern cantons of Switzerland. However, if you're like many expats, you found a job in Zurich or Geneva or maybe in Basel or in Bern or Lucerne, you might be thinking, well, that's where I want to go. I want to move straight to that city where the office is and be only minutes away from the office of my new employer. If that's the case, then you might actually have a hard time of finding a place to live in Switzerland, because these are the places that are like super overcrowded, where there's lots of competition for flats. So since the most popular cities in Switzerland among expats, and particularly tech and science expats, are Zurich and Geneva, and to a lesser degree also Basel, that's where maybe you shouldn't want to live if you're coming to Switzerland for the first time, unless you really have a lot of patience in hunting down flats. But the good news is that, especially since the pandemic and in general in recent years, with digitalization of jobs progressing further and further, it's no longer necessary to be 5 minutes away from the office and to come into the office every day. But instead, many employers, especially if you work in a job that doesn't require you to be in a lab every day or something like this, many employers have actually switched to a model where you only need to come into the office once a week, or maybe only once every 2 weeks, or even once a month, since working from home in tech jobs is so efficient nowadays, and in many places it has actually started to persist even after the pandemic. This means you don't have to live in Zurich, even if you work for Google and want to be close to the office or something like this, because you don't have to be there every day anyways. Instead, what you can do is you can, for example, move a bit outside of the city, and then you maybe have to commute for half an hour every time you do actually want to go to the office or meet somebody in the city. And if you want to optimize that even further, you could actually move much farther out to other parts of Switzerland. As I said, for example, the south, Ticino and Vallis, where rents are lower, it's much easier to find a place to live. Another really important factor that most expats do not understand about Switzerland is that income tax varies a lot in Switzerland, both by canton, but even down to the municipality level where you live. So you might actually be able to save hundreds of Swiss francs each month just by moving to a different city or a different canton in Switzerland. So basically, whenever you look at a flat, you always have to estimate the income tax and put it on top of your rent, because it might be that in some place you pay maybe 300-400 Swiss francs more in rent, but you might actually save more than that, let's say 800 Swiss francs per month, in terms of income taxes. So the sum of rent and income tax might actually be lower in a place where the rent is higher. Of course, you always have to do the exact math, because it really depends a lot on where specifically you're moving, and of course also your salary. But if you're a techie, chances are your income is going to be at more than 100,000, or maybe even 200,000-300,000. And at these levels, you will easily save hundreds, if not 1,000 Swiss francs each month in terms of income tax. So paying a little more rent might be a good idea financially. So here's the bottom line. Don't move to Zurich or Geneva or Basel or Bern or Lucerne or wherever you are just because your employer is there. It's really not necessary. Switzerland also has excellent public transportation. That means that even if you're like 50 kilometers away from the office, it can be really easy in many cases to just take a train and be there in no time. So why is it actually so difficult to find a place to live in these overcrowded places like Zurich or Geneva and the like? Well, if you're a landlord in one of these places in Switzerland, you're in a super luxurious situation. Obviously, you have tons and tons of applicants for each flat that you want to rent out. So you might actually end up preferring people who already live in Switzerland over people who do not live in Switzerland. And to be frank, that doesn't even need to be a racist thing. Very often it's simply about the hassle that a landlord has, because of course somebody who already lives in Switzerland knows the game, can provide all the paperwork and so on, so it's just easier. So landlords very often in Switzerland do discriminate against people who are just moving to Switzerland for the first time, because for them it's more hassle, whereas people who already know the system are just easier clients, kind of. So since it's so difficult to find a place to live in these big cities in Switzerland, and combined with the fact that public transportation is so great all around Switzerland, like literally every part of Switzerland, and finally the fact that you don't even need to be in the office in many jobs like every week or every day, you should really consider to move outside of the big cities or even to a completely different part of Switzerland where it's much easier to find a flat, where the rents are lower, where the cost of living is lower, and if you're lucky, where even taxes are lower. And of course, where there's maybe more space so you can enjoy all these walks in nature. So you might now be saying, well, Raphael, this all sounds very good in theory, but does it actually work in practice? Are people doing that? And the answer is yes. The clever people, and of course, those who can afford it in the sense of having a remote compatible job, yes, they do that. A client of mine who I recently helped to move to Switzerland is doing exactly that. His office is in Basel, which is in the northwest of Switzerland, but for a number of reasons he decided not to live in Basel, but instead closer to the center of Switzerland. So now he does have to commute about 1 to 2 hours to the office if he goes there, but he doesn't have to go there every day. So it's completely fine to do that commute once a month, once a week maybe, and for the rest of the time enjoy all these benefits that you get with it. In this particular case, much lower taxes, saving hundreds of Swiss francs each month in terms of taxes. Having an easier time of finding a place to live where you can, for example, have pets, or where there's lots of nature around you and you don't need to take a car or a train somewhere, but you just go outside and take a walk along the lake and it's right there, and the air quality is better. So he's really enjoying that, and I think that many more people should actually do the exact same thing. So now you might have a few concerns about all these ideas, and I want to talk about the most common ones. As a techie, and especially as a remote worker, you would probably want to have really, really fast internet in your home or wherever you're going to go work. And the good news is that in a lot of cities and villages in Switzerland, the internet speed is really, really fast. You can actually get gigabit fiber to the home internet in many of the places all around Switzerland. And even in those places where you can't get that, you can get really fast G-fast DSL, so you can get hundreds of megabits both in terms of upload and download in many villages in Switzerland. Of course, you have to check that a bit, but it's really easy because the website from Swisscom or your favorite reseller of DSL services will give you the exact internet speed you can get at any particular address throughout Switzerland, so you're actually sure what's going to happen and there's no bad surprises. Take a look at this infographic here from the official government authority checking on all these things. What this infographic shows us is that in some parts of Switzerland there's actually a big surplus of places you can live in. some flats are literally empty for a couple of months. And that's not necessarily because the buildings are old and not nice. Very often that's just because nobody knows about these places, so they're basically underrated, which is why I'm telling you about this today. One more good reason why you should consider moving to the countryside, be it just outside of Zurich or even farther away down in Vallis or Ticino, because you will have much more space to go horseback riding, go hiking, go with your dog, or do whatever you like to do in nature. These are really good reasons to not live in the city center. So let's summarize what I told you today about finding places to live in Switzerland. It can be remarkably easy to find a place in Switzerland to live as a techie if you have a job that's remote compatible and if you're willing to not make the same mistakes as most of the expats. Don't move to the center of Zurich or Geneva or Basel, Lucerne, Zug, wherever you name it, but instead go a bit outside to the countryside. Be it just right outside Zurich, for example, if you just landed a really nice and well-paying tech job in Zurich, or moving to a completely different canton, especially if your salary is maybe not quite as high, then it can be really, really attractive for you to move to Vallis, to Ticino, or many other smaller places all around Switzerland, where the cost of living is lower. It's still easy enough to actually go to the office once a week, once a month, and it might be much nicer, much more nature around you, much better air quality, and many other benefits like this, while you still have great infrastructure, decent schools, sometimes even with better class sizes and other benefits, fast internet. Check the speeds before you rent something, but you can really get fast internet speeds all around Switzerland. So overall, it really makes sense to move to the less common places as a techie who's just moving to Switzerland. As always, if you liked this video, click like and subscribe to see more videos like this about moving to Switzerland. And of course, I'm really looking forward to your questions. So if you have any questions about what part to move to in Switzerland, if Ticino and Vallis are really as interesting as I tell you, and what the other parts of Switzerland are where you might actually find really good deals to rent a place, especially as an expat who is new to Switzerland, write it in the comment section and I'm happy to help you guys out. Find a place to live in Switzerland without all the hassle that most people have to go through. See you in the next video.